Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Successful with Schizophrenia. I'm your host, Chayilee Inspira, and I'm so excited for our next episode, which is going to be on limiting beliefs. So, what exactly is limiting belief? Well, I can tell you from my experience what a limiting belief is. Recently, I came across a limiting belief, and I didn't even know I had it. So, I was meeting a lot of people this weekend, and we were talking about my podcast. And I noticed that I was telling people, oh, no need to listen. It won't apply to you because these are people who are not diagnosed. And I was telling them, oh, don't listen, don't listen, don't listen. And I was thinking, why am I telling them not to listen to the podcast that I've been working on for the past year? Doesn't make any sense. Wouldn't I want to share my podcast? So I gave it some thought. And then I realized that I kind of don't feel like I'm good at podcasting. That's the honest truth. And that is a limiting belief that I have. I don't know whether I'm good or not. I have some listeners. Shout out to USA and Australia. Those are my top two listeners. Um, but thank you for listening, by the way, if you're not in those two countries. But, anyways, I don't know if I'm necessarily good. So I was almost like shy to share what I do. I kind of feel like when I'm podcasting, I'm speaking out to my phone, which a lot of people talk to themselves anyway, especially my audience. You probably notice that you talk to yourself. So I didn't really realize that people would be listening in on my story and on my coping skills that I've used over the years. And I felt, I don't know, maybe a little embarrassed that my podcast is not amazing like the people who have been podcasting for 10 plus years. I know it's ridiculous to compare myself to people who have been doing it for ages. Sorry, I just ate something spicy, so my voice sounds a little raspy. But when people are doing it for so many years, they gain more experience. And I was thinking about it. I actually like my old podcasts better than my new ones. And the reason why is because my old podcasts, they have some more meat and potatoes to them. They have like um, more information, I guess, about me, about my story, about how to get by. And so I'm kind of going to go back to that. I'm going to take a little bit of the good stuff, leave out the bad, and I'm going to start with this new season. So if you listen to the last one, you would know that we're working on limiting beliefs this upcoming 3, 4 episodes. And one way to recognize whether you have a limiting belief is to see if there's a behavior or a habit that you have that you feel like is not 100% servicing you, or serving you, I should say. So, for example, I noticed that I was saying, no, it's okay, don't listen to the podcast, even though I kind of wanted people to listen to it because I thought I wasn't very good. That was a limiting belief. That was a story that I was telling myself. So, do you have any habits that you believe are not serving you? For example, sleeping in, or perhaps binge eating, or restricting fun because it costs money. Maybe it's responsible, maybe it's not. But either sense, there's a limiting belief behind anything that is not serving you. Okay, so just think about it, and if you have a question as to why you are doing the things that you do, you can bring out a journal, little notepad, pen, pencil, whatever you got. And I encourage you to journal, not to write on your phone. There is a difference. But just ask yourself, why do I have this habit? And then it might take a minute, but write down the very first thing that pops in your mind. And when you get better at free writing, this will come automatically, and you may have answers that you didn't even know that you had. Okay, so for example, when I did this, I said, "Why am I telling people not to listen to my podcast?" And I was writing it out. And then I said, "Because I feel embarrassed that I'm not good enough." Wow, I didn't even realize I had that limiting belief. But it helped to write it down because I was automatically writing the answer without really having to process it. So it kind of gave me more clarity without having to do a whole lot of breath work exercises or meditation. It's kind of like a quick, easy shortcut to what the root problem is. So that is what my limiting belief is right now. And I promise I will show up a little bit better every day than what I have been doing in the past, because I don't want to feel embarrassed to share my podcast. I want to share it with anyone who feels like they could benefit from it. And honestly, who can't benefit from an entertaining story and some coping skills, right? Right. So, one thing that really helped set me on track, this is like a little tidbit of information because I was having a lot of conversations this weekend, and I was talking to one of my drivers this weekend, and he asked me, he said, what made you get back on track? What made you turn everything around when you were pretty much in a downward spiral? What got you better? And I can attribute two main things that were like the real contributing factors as to why I got better. And it made me go back to all the limiting beliefs that I had in the past and how I overcame them. Okay. So, the first thing that helped me get a whole lot better was thinking about all my responsibilities. At the time, I was going to college full time, I was working full time, I was taking care of my dog, I was living by myself, I had a car, and I was responsible for quite a few bills, still am. And I realized that if I don't get better, I don't have a job. I can't pay my bills. I can't live in my apartment. I can't have a home, right? I would have to live with someone or live on the streets. And I went in this downward spiral of how bad could it really get? How bad could it really get if I did not take care of my mental health? And to be quite honest, that scared the doo-doo out of me. I'll say doo-doo. Um, and that is what kind of brought me back to reality a little bit. But another thing that brought me back to reality was a quote. I'm gonna butcher it. I always do. I always shorten it to what serves me. But the quote is summarized version is your struggles today will be your survival story for someone else, or something to that effect. Is your struggles today will be someone's survival guide for them tomorrow. And that really resonated with me, even though I butchered the words. The message really resonated with me. And I looked back at my life and I realized I have been training for living with schizophrenia and overcoming my problems on my own my entire life. I've been training for that. Back when I was in cheer, right? I was the flyer, the person that would go up in the air, right? You're kind of on your own. Like you have a team underneath you, but if you fall, it's kind of up to your responsibility to fall or stand up and do all the tricks, or whether you end up injuring yourself. So it's a lot of responsibility. And beyond cheer, I was a foreign exchange student in a foreign country. I was there for like 3 months, 4 months, and that helped me gain a lot of independence. And then after that, I was in the military, which helped me gain even more independence. And then I was living on my own since 18. So when I think about it, all of these little compartments of my life helped build me up to who I am today. And how I came over my limiting beliefs in the past was through looking at my responsibilities and knowing that my struggles have a solution. My struggles will be someone else's survival guide. Okay? I did not go through all this journey for nothing. Okay? People will benefit from my story. I'll make sure of it. Just like you guys listening to the podcast. So whether you have schizophrenia or whether you don't, whether you're part of the pharmaceutical company I'm working with, or whether you're just stumbling upon this podcast for the first time, thank you so much for listening. And I really hope that you overcome your limiting beliefs. If you have a hard time finding your limiting belief, ask yourself why 5 times. So I'll give you an example, a different example. Let's see. Why am I choosing to eat vegan food? Okay. It's a limiting belief. Why am I not choosing to eat vegan food? Because I'm trying to eat vegan food right now. And why am I choosing not to? Well, because it's hard to get the food. It's hard to get access. Why is it hard to get the access? Well, because I'm not exactly putting forth effort to prepare to get the food. Why am I not putting forth the access to prepare to get to the food? Well, because maybe part of me doesn't want to be vegan. Maybe I still want to enjoy the chocolate. Maybe I still want to enjoy the cheesecake. And I know I can't have those things if I'm truly vegan. So that's why I say I'm partially vegan. I'm working on it, vegan in progress, right? But ultimately, I know it's those comfort foods that I'm leaning on. This morning it was brownies. I wanted brownies and I was looking up where I could get vegan brownies because Lord knows I was not going to make them. But when it came down to it, it's like I wasn't ready to let go of the junk food. I wasn't ready to let go of the sweets. I have a real sweet tooth. Okay. So your homework, your journal prompt for this week would be to ask yourself why 5 times. So you use your answer as your question the next time, and you say, why is this blah, blah, blah? Why do I think this way? And normally, why is not a good question to ask yourself, but in this case, we'll make an exception. And the reason why I say why is not always a good question to ask yourself is because it can very easily land into the why me? Why is my life this way? And we don't want to get into that, okay? Because that's a downward spiral that we don't want to get into. But when we're doing why for clarity purposes, it's a whole lot more helpful. So I hope that helps you for this week's podcast. And next week, we're going to talk about being your own expert. And this is in no way to dismiss doctors, therapists, psychotherapists, psychologists, you name it, any sort of professional. It's actually just to gain independence and confidence to take charge of your own recovery. Okay, so it's a kind of like a little controversial message, but I hope you stay tuned. All right, so I will catch you next week. Bye.